8.4, solving trinomials. I'm going to go through just 8.1 through 8.3, a little background, that kind of stuff to refresh and remind you how to do these. I'm going to write some things in standard form. And then I'm going to solve by factoring the last 5 problems. Okay, so just hang with me here. Again, we've been practicing working with these big X's. We are looking for numbers that multiply to create 56 and combine together to make 15. In this one, it would be 7 and 8. 7 times 8 makes 56. 7 plus 8 makes 15. Here for 12 and 20, it would be 10 and 2. 10 times 2 makes 20, and 10 plus 2 makes 12. And then here, negative 65, it should be 5 and 13. So 5 times 13. And you can use the chart that's posted to the classroom for this. And then 5 times 13 does make 65, but one of them needs to be negative. So to figure out which one should be negative to make this negative 65, I'm going to look down here at my 8. And my sign here is positive 8. So the bigger out of my two numbers here needs to have the same sign as my bottom. So the bigger one here needs to have the same sign as my bottom. So what's bigger, 5 or 13? 13 is bigger, so 13 needs to be positive. So that tells me my 5 is what's going to be negative. So doing the big X is just how we show our work. It's how we do our work. For this one, we are going to factor. And so factoring this, again, if we have a trinomial, this is how we set up our big X. We're going to take our last number, and that goes on top, so a negative 6 on top. And our middle number, a negative 5, goes in the bottom. And in order to make a negative 6 and a negative 5, our numbers would be 1 times 6. And my bigger number has to have the same sign as my bottom number, so that's going to be a negative 6 here. And then we can do a little check. 1 times negative 6 makes negative 6. 1 minus 6 makes negative 5. And then, so when we're doing this, this creates a special pattern that says x plus 1, that 1 came from here, times x minus 6, that 6 came from here. If I were to multiply these up, it would give me this. It would give me what we started with. So it's our middle value, x plus 1, x times negative, or x minus 6. Okay, so I'm going to write these next two in standard form, and then I'll show you what we're doing from there. We're going to put it all together. So just to remind you, to get this in standard form, it needs to say equals 0. So for this one, I need to subtract 2 from both sides. And that's going to give me 0 equals this one, x squared minus 16. That's a special pattern we haven't learned yet, but I got it to equal 0. That's all I wanted to show you. Again, to get this in standard form, I need to add 5x squared to both sides. So now 5x squared plus 4x minus 7 equals 0. I couldn't put this 5x squared with anything because that's not squared. So that's standard form. So when we're going to start solving the quadratic by factoring, the first thing we need to do, we need to make sure this says equals 0. In order to get this to say equals 0, I'm going to move whatever is is chilling over here so that I can get it to say 0 now. So that's now a 0. And now I have x squared minus 4x minus 5 equals 0. Now that it says equals 0, I can fill out my big X. I put a negative 5 on top, a negative 4 on the bottom, and this would be negative 5 times 1. So I'm going to do some work over in this space here. Remember that this now creates x minus 5 times x plus 1. But now both of these equal 0. So I need to figure out what would x have to be in this set to multiply and make everything equal 0, and what could x be in this set to multiply with everything to make it equal 0. So the way we figure that out is we set each one equal to 0. So I'm going to say x minus 5 equals 0, and I'm going to say x plus 1 equals 0. That's going to tell me for what value for x could I plug in that would get the whole thing to cancel out and equal 0. My first value is 5. My second value, I'm subtracting 1 from both sides, is negative 1. So my two answers here, I'm going to write as with separated by a comma, 5, comma, negative 1. So we're getting this to say equals 0. Then we're factoring by using our big X. So I got this to say equals 0. Then I was able to use my big X. Once I use my big X, I write my two sets, and then I'm going to set each group equal to 0 and solve for each group to get my answer. Let's show you another example. So for this one, I'm just going to write the whole thing off to the side here. So I have x squared minus 5x minus 28 equals 8. Okay, I'm going to show you my work over here. So the first thing, I have to get this to say equals 0. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides and be left with x squared minus 5x minus 36 equals 0. I got 36 when I put these together. The next thing, I can fill out my big X, negative 36 on top, negative 5 on the bottom. We've practiced all of this. And then this would be a negative 9 times a positive 4. So a negative 9 times a positive 4 would make negative 36, and it would combine together to make negative 5. That means that this can be rewritten as x minus 9 times x plus 4. It's the same value, it's just a different way of writing it. The same way that having $20, I can have one $20 bill, I can have two $10 bills. It means the same thing. Okay? It's the same value, it just looks different. And now that I have my groups, so we've practiced everything up to here. We've done this before. Now the new thing today is we're going to take each group and set it equal to 0 and solve. And you're going to notice for these ones, they end up just being the opposite. So for this one, x is going to equal a positive 9. And x is going to equal a negative 4. So I have two answers. I'm going to write my two answers over here, 9, comma, negative 4. I don't put parentheses around these because they're not, that's not one point. It's two different points. It's crossing at 9 and it's crossing at negative 4. I'll show you a couple more examples. For this one, x squared equals 5x minus 36. I'm sorry, plus 36. Make sure that you copy down correctly when you write these, or it will give you the wrong answer. So now that I'm sure that I have the right thing written down, I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides to get rid of this, because I need this to equal 0. I also am going to subtract 36 from both sides to get this to equal 0. Right? So when I do that, I'm left with x squared minus 5x minus 36 equals 0. Now that I have that, I'm going to fill out my big X, negative 36 and negative 5. These are the same numbers we were working with last time. I'm going to get a negative 9 and a positive 4 again. So I'm rewriting this as x minus 9 times x plus 4 equals 0. And each one gets set equal to 0 now. X minus 9 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. So I'm adding 9 here. And x equals 9. I'm subtracting 4. And x equals negative 4. So my two answers on this one were also 9 and negative 4. Okay, last two examples. I'm going to copy this one down off to the side. So I have x squared minus 20x plus 38 equals negative 9x plus 8. Okay, so to get this to equal 0, I'm going to have to move this 9x over by adding it to both sides. I'm going to have to get rid of this negative 8, or this 8, by subtracting it to both sides. So these both cancel out to give me 0 on this side. And when I evaluate the other side, I'm going to get negative 11x plus 30 equals 0. Now that it says equals 0, I can do my big X. I have 30 on top, negative 11 on the bottom. And that would be a negative 5 times a negative 6. So I can rewrite this whole thing as x minus 5 times x minus 6. Okay, it means the same thing, it just looks different. It's just same as, having one $20 bill, two $10 bills, or four $5 bills. It all means the same thing. It all means $20. It's all the same amount, but it's different versions of the same amount. Now that I have these factored down, I'm going to split them. X minus 5 equals 0, and x minus 6 equals 0. And then we're adding 5 to both sides here to get x equals 5. And we're adding 6 here to get x equals 6. So my two answers are 5 and 6. And our last example, we have x squared minus 8x plus 10 equals 3x. So remember, our first thing, we've got to get this to say equals 0. I get that by moving that over. So I'm left with x squared minus 11x now plus 10 equals 0. When I fill out my big X, 10 on top, negative 11 on the bottom will be a negative 1 times a negative 10. And so I can rewrite this whole thing as x minus 1 times x minus 10. And then I'm setting each one equal to 0. X minus 1 equals 0. X minus 10 equals 0. I can add 1 to both sides here and get x equals 1. I can add 10 to both sides here and get x equals 10. So my two answers here are 1 and 10.